In this video, we will start with some basics, with some basic geography knowledge about geographic coordinates. Actually, how GIS, geographic information systems, how do I combine the spatial data together? For example, Google Maps, Google My Maps, as generally any GIS we know. We have notified that the location of our points, lines, and contours on Earth could be placed to some particular location in the maps, in the digital maps on the Earth service. So the question is, how does Google Maps or any other GIS, how do they know about where to place our data sets? For example, we open it in one of our previous meetings, the data set of American universities in Google My Maps, and actually every university was placed to a correct location. So actually we know already how it finds the location with geographic coordinates, but actually what is it? What is the geographic coordinates? From this spreadsheet with the list of the American universities, we have notified that there are actually two figures from two columns, and actually these geographic coordinates, it is latitude and longitude. Let us just remember briefly from school geography classes what latitude and longitude mean. Actually, both latitude and longitude are the angular quantities. So they are measured as an angle between some primary or zero plane and the direction to a particular point on the Earth's surface. Maybe it sounds a little bit complex, but actually that's easy. Actually, latitude is basically means how far is your location from the equator in terms of angle between the equatorial plane and the direction to a point. How far is it, like in that picture, in that image? And actually we could measure that angle, and this measurement will give us the value of the latitude of your location. And if you would think a little bit, you will understand that, and actually probably you remember that the latitude could have values from 0 to 90 degrees. So 0 in equator and 90 degrees for northern pole and southern pole. And actually, the latitude should somehow have a direction, north direction and south direction from the equator. So we could not only measure the angle, but also know in what direction we measure it, in the south, towards the south, or towards the north. And this is just a few basic facts about latitude from the Encyclopedia Britannica. And this is a facts about so-called lines of latitude called parallels. Actually, with all the locations with the same latitude, when make a circle called a parallel, and there are some basic facts about that. Now, about the longitude. Longitude is a little bit different. It's also an angular. It also has an angular value, and basically, longitude shows you how far is your location from the so-called prime meridian. Actually, what is meridian? I hope you also remember. This is a line connecting the northern pole to the north pole to the south pole on the Earth's surface. And actually, there's one of a meridian called prime meridian, and from its plane, we could measure the angle between this meridian and the direction to your object. And actually, which one Yeah, you could measure this angle, but which meridian is the prime meridian? Actually, this was chosen just arbitrarily. It just happens by some historical reasons why the Greenwich meridian was chosen. Actually, this meridian goes via observatory Greenwich. Actually, today is the suburb of Big London, the capital of Great Britain. And just historically, this is so-called zero meridian. And actually the longitude we could measure from that zero meridian, or called Greenwich meridian, into both directions, to the west and to the east. And also it is from zero, could varies from 0 to 180 degrees. And also it could have a direction to the west or to the east. Actually, on the opposite side of the air from Greenwich meridian, there's so-called opposite meridian, 180 degrees meridian, which goes through basically through the Pacific, also passes across the easternmost part of Russia, Fiji Islands, and Antarctica, and it is the opposite. It has the longitude of 180 degrees in both directions, in the west and in the east. And this is also some basic facts about meridians, how they structure it. I believe everyone knows that pretty well. And if you will just draw the equator and the Greenwich meridian in Google Maps, it will look like that. For some parts of Antarctic, for example, didn't fit my screen, so this is a little bit moved from the center. But anyway, you could see the equator and you could see the Greenwich meridian, and you could see that these two lines divide the map into 4 sections. And in that section, it will be north from equator, it will be northern latitude, and westwards from Greenwich meridian to the western longitude, and to the east it will be eastern longitude. But both are northern latitude because they are north from the equator. And so also in the south from the equator, with the southern latitude, also could be western longitude and eastern longitude. And the next question actually is, what are the units for measuring this longitude and latitude? Because this is an angular quantities, so we could measure them in angular degrees, angular minutes, and angular seconds. I believe everyone knows that also pretty well. And we just have to remember the degrees, minutes, and seconds are a little bit specific units, because 1 degree contains 60 minutes, not 100 minutes, like, for example, kilometer and meters and centimeters. You could just remember that. And also we have identified the direction. It should be, as I mentioned, north and south for latitude and west or east for longitude. So totally, to define the coordinates of your location, of your points on the Earth's surface, we have to remember 6 digits and plus 2 directions. So for example, this is the record in the bottom of the slide. You could see in red the geographic coordinates of New York City. These marks of degrees, angular minutes, and angular seconds could be recorded like that. It has a 40 degrees and 42 minutes to the north from equator, and 17 degrees with some seconds to the west from the Greenwich meridian. So this is how it looks like. This somehow distance actually measure it as an angle from equator and from Greenwich meridian will give you the location of center of New York City. The geographic coordinates of a few other cities in the different part of the world also will have its latitude and longitude, and northern latitude for New York City and for Moscow, and for Rio de Janeiro and for Sydney. This is the latitude will be southern one, and also it could be western longitude for New York and for Rio, and eastern longitude for Moscow and for Sydney. However, if we remember the list of American universities, we will see that latitude and longitude here are recorded not in minutes, degrees, minutes, and seconds, but just as two figures, two decimal figures. And this is just another way to record geographic coordinates, which is called decimal degrees. This is a common way to keep and to display latitude and longitude in geographic information system, because for computers it is usually much easier to deal with only two figures, two decimal figures, one for longitude and another for latitude. So two figures instead of 6, it is much more easy to handle, at least for computers. And also for positive values, they indicate the northern latitude, that is longitude, and negative values they indicate the southern latitude and western longitude. So with a positive or negative, with a sign minus or plus, the signs we could also define the direction. So, for example, the coordinates for the same New York City in decimal degrees will look like that. Only two digits, one positive because it is a northern hemisphere, and longitude is negative. Latitude usually goes first and longitude the second. So it is much more easy to handle only with two figures. And also for the same for large cities from various hemisphere, you will see you also could record the geographic coordinates as two figures in decimal degrees. So of course you could very easy to convert the values for latitude and longitude from degrees, minutes, and seconds to decimal degrees and back. You have just remember that half a degree is 30 minutes, and quarter of a degree is 15 minutes, and 0.1 degree is 6 minutes, or 360 seconds. So this is quite easy to calculate. You could just, if you would like to convert minutes to decimal part of degrees, you could just divide minutes by 16, and then add to the integer degree and do the same with seconds, and you will just have two decimal figures, and vice versa. You could calculate, you could just multiply the fractional part of decimal degree by 60, you will get minutes, and fractional parts of minutes multiplied by 60, you will get seconds. Just do not forget to use absolute values without minus, otherwise you will get wrong calculations. This is just the calculations in Excel, how to calculate with degrees, minutes, and seconds from a city, center of the city of New York, from one system to another system. I will not go deep in that. You could just try to do it in the Excel table. That's pretty simple. But there is even easier way for conversion. You do not need to deal with all these Excel tables and calculations figures. You could just use Google Maps, and Google Maps will do it for you. You could just copy your coordinates to the search field in any format. For example, here you will just copy this the coordinates. I copied the latitude and longitude for the New York City in degrees, minutes, and seconds. And if you click search here, you will be located to that position, and your coordinates of your point will be displayed in both degrees, minutes, and seconds, and in decimal degrees. So Google Earth could recalculate everything for you automatically. And also you could do vice versa. You could search for decimal degrees, and in the end, anyway, you will be displayed the geographic coordinates presented in both ways. That's pretty easy. And also for any particular location in the Google map, you could just right click and learn about its geographic coordinates in decimal degrees immediately. But if you would like to also know the coordinates in degrees, minutes, and seconds, you could just click what's here, and then in the information window in the bottom, click the geographic coordinates, and you will be located to that particular place. You will be zoomed in, and the coordinates will be presented in both formats, in degrees, minutes, and seconds, and in decimal degrees. So that's basically very easy. Similar question, another Zoom level. So that's it about geographic coordinates. Thank you.